Okay, let's dive right into this. When you hear the words New York, what's the very first thing that flashes through your mind? Are you picturing the glowing screens of Times Square? The relentless, crazy hum of Wall Street? Maybe the Statue of Liberty? Now, while those images are absolutely iconic all over the globe, they really only tell a tiny fraction of the story. Today, in this explainer, we are completely decoding the Empire State. Because New York, well, it isn't just a spot on a map. It's a literal global engine. An engine of finance, culture, and sheer power that shapes the modern world. But, and this is a really big but, it's also a state defined by some intense and totally surprising contrasts. We're talking ancient, rugged wilderness right alongside soaring skyscrapers, and unimaginable wealth existing right next to profound societal challenges. So to actually understand why New York matters so much, both within the US and on the global stage, we have to look at the whole picture, the whole shebang.
So, here is our roadmap for decoding the Empire State today. We'll start with 1. The geographic stage. Then 2. The crucible of empires. 3. The engine of America. 4. The gateway. 5. The global node. And finally, 6. Modern realities.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the geographic stage.
You know, to really get New York, you have to understand a fundamental geographic and cultural split that basically defines the entire state, upstate versus downstate. Upstate New York is, frankly, incredibly vast. We are talking about the rugged, sprawling wilderness of the Adirondack and Catskill Mountains, massive, endless tracts of forest and the shorelines of 2 Great Lakes. It's a landscape historically carved out by nature and agriculture. But then, look downstate. Downstate encompasses New York City, Long Island, and the lower Hudson Valley. Down here, we see intense, unrivaled urban density. I mean, over 11 million residents, literally more than half of the state's entire population, are packed into this incredibly dynamic, tiny southeastern corner. It is essentially a tale of 2 entirely different worlds, somehow sharing one government.
Now, here is a stat that might actually surprise you. Despite bordering 5 U.S. states and Canada, a massive 13.6% of New York's total area is actually water. Think about that for a second. In fact, New York is the only state in the entire Union that touches both the Great Lakes and the Atlantic Ocean. This unique geographic positioning, especially featuring the highly strategic Hudson River and the deep, protected harbors of the Atlantic coastline, it naturally predestined the state to become a central, massive hub for trade, movement, and global connection.
Moving right along to Section 2, the crucible of empires.
Let's zoom back and see how this all builds. For roughly 12,000 years, Native American peoples, predominantly the powerful Iroquoian and Algonquian tribes, dominated this landscape. They created these highly complex societies and vast, intricate trade networks. But then, the 17th century rolls around and the power dynamics shifted violently. In 1614, the Dutch established Fort Nassau near what we now know as Albany to capitalize on the wildly lucrative fur trade, and they founded the colony of New Netherland. However, the English, well, they recognized the immense strategic value of this harbor and river system right away. So by 1664, a British fleet just sails in, conquers the territory, and renames it New York. This entire era was defined by constant, brutal struggle, from indigenous sovereignty to the violent beaver wars, and ultimately, the consolidation of European control.
Which brings us to Section 3, the engine of America.
Because of that highly strategic harbor we just talked about, New York became the literal battlefield of the American Revolution. The state hosted roughly a third of all engagements in the entire war. The resistance actually found its early voice right here with the Stamp Act Congress back in 1765. Then, in 1776, the state witnessed the absolute largest battle of the war, the Battle of Long Island. The very next year, the decisive American victory at Saratoga became this massive turning point, which convinced France to formally ally with the revolutionaries. After this grueling, devastating war, which, by the way, saw parts of New York City occupied for years by the British, the state ratified the new U.S. Constitution in 1788, officially becoming the 11th state in the Union.
But what truly locked in the famous nickname, the Empire State, was an unprecedented engineering marvel, the Erie Canal. When it was completed in 1825, this thing was basically the moon landing of its day. The canal connected the interior Great Lakes directly to the Atlantic Ocean via the Hudson River. Let me tell you, this was the ultimate economic game changer. It slashed overland transport costs by up to 95%. Think about that. It meant goods from the American heartland could flow seamlessly right through New York City, instantly transforming it into the nation's absolute premier ocean port. And this connectivity sparked an incredible economic boom across the entire state,
birthing massive heritage corporations, giants of American industry. We're talking heavy hitters like American Express, General Electric, and IBM. They all trace their roots straight back to the unimaginable wealth and innovation generated during this exact period.
All right, let's step into Section 4, the Gateway.
Now, what's really interesting about this next point is the sheer scale of the human capital. 12 million. That is the staggering number of immigrants who passed through the doors of Ellis Island between 1892 and 1954. And keep in mind, millions more had already arrived at Castle Garden before that. They disembarked at these bustling, chaotic docks along the Hudson and East Rivers, bringing the diverse skills, cultures, and intense labor that would fundamentally build the modern United States. New York City wasn't just an economic hub anymore. It was the literal physical gateway through which the future demographic makeup of the entire nation arrived.
And here is exactly why this history is so deeply, undeniably relevant today. Because of those massive historical waves of migration, over 100 million Americans across the United States today can trace their ancestry directly back to New York's historic immigration depots. That's a huge portion of the country. The legacy of Ellis Island isn't just a chapter in New York's history book, it is the shared family history of the nation. This constant rolling influx of new ideas and cultures is exactly what ingrained a spirit of relentless cosmopolitanism into the state's very DNA.
Section 5, the Global Node.
So today, New York City essentially operates as the financial and cultural capital of the world. Lower Manhattan is firmly anchored by Wall Street, which is home to the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ. And just to put that in perspective, those are the two largest stock exchanges on the planet by total market capitalization. No contest. Just a bit north, Midtown Manhattan stands as the world's single largest central business district. But its influence extends way, way beyond just capital. It's an unrivaled global media, entertainment, and cultural epicenter. From the neon lights and theaters of Broadway to massive international news conglomerates, the trends that are generated right here in New York literally dictate the pulse of the globe.
But hey, New York's power definitely isn't confined just to the city limits. To balance out downstate's intense financial dominance, Eastern New York, spanning Albany and the Hudson Valley, has been quietly transforming into Tech Valley. This is a crucial, rapidly growing high-technology and computer hardware ecosystem. Billions in dollars from international tech firms and the state government have been poured into this region, driving cutting-edge nanotechnology research and vital microchip manufacturing. It really represents a massive, calculated pivot toward the economy of the future.
And sitting right in the middle of these two distinct powerhouses is the state capital, Albany. State politics basically orbit this intense, nonstop push and pull relationship between these two wildly different halves of the state. Albany legislators are constantly having to navigate a profound political balance. They have to manage the immense economic gravity, wealth, and the incredibly dense urban infrastructure needs of downstate, while simultaneously addressing the vast geographic scale, the agricultural interests, and the industrial transitions happening upstate. It is a delicate, completely perpetual governing challenge.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 6, Modern Realities.
Let's actually break down the incredible modern diversity of the state's 20 million residents today. According to the 2020 census, the population is approximately 55.3% white, 19.5% Hispanic or Latino, 15.1% Black, and 10.5% Asian. Continuing its deep historic legacy, the state absolutely remains a leading destination for migrants from all over the globe. Boroughs like Queens, for instance, are widely celebrated as some of the most ethnically and linguistically diverse places on the entire planet.
However, to paint a truly complete and balanced picture, we have to look closely at the economic shifts. Because while Wall Street commands this immense global wealth, upstate New York endured heavy, painful deindustrialization throughout the second half of the 20th century. Many historic manufacturing hubs saw severe economic decline and massive job losses. Yet interestingly, the narrative is starting to shift again. Today, cities like Buffalo are seeing renewed interest and are even emerging as modern climate havens. They're drawing people back in due to their access to abundant fresh water from the Great Lakes and the relatively insulated weather patterns compared to other parts of the country.
So, the crucial point we need to address is this number right here, 74,178. That is the estimated number of homeless individuals living in New York, according to a 2022 federal report. It is a deeply sobering statistic, especially when you realize it exists right alongside the immense global wealth we were just talking about. It perfectly highlights the stark realities and the deep, deep economic divides that exist right within the state's own borders.
And this leads us directly to the major contemporary challenges currently facing the state's leadership and its citizens today. First off, a staggering 92% of the population is heavily urbanized, placing an enormous, unprecedented strain on century-old infrastructure. The state is actively grappling with intense economic inequality and a severe housing affordability crisis, particularly in those dense downstate areas. Furthermore, as it continues to be a massive hub for migration, it has to navigate the highly complex dynamics of being a sanctuary city, along with the real logistical challenges of supporting new populations. And all of this is happening as the state pushes forward with its ongoing efforts toward pandemic-era economic resilience and recovery.
Which finally leaves us with this massive, provocative question. Can the Empire State actually resolve its vast internal divides? Can it bridge that stark gap between immense wealth and housing insecurity and balance the intense needs of the dense downstate metropolis with the vast, changing upstate regions, all while somehow maintaining its crown as the cultural and financial capital of the world? The way New York answers this question won't just shape its own future. It's going to shape the future of the entire nation. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. And as always, keep seeking to understand the incredibly complex world around you.